You are not who you think you are. The face you see in the mirror, the name you respond to, the roles you play in life, none of it is the true you. What if I told you that the very identity you hold on to is the thing keeping you trapped? What if the ego, that constant voice that whispers, "This is who I am," is nothing but a mask, a well-crafted illusion, designed to protect you from the truth? But here's the catch. The more you protect this illusion, the more it controls you. And the more it controls you, the more you are shackled to a life of suffering, anxiety, and limitation. So what is this ego trap that so many of us find ourselves in? Why has no one truly warned us about it? In this video, we will dive deep into the mystery of the ego. You will learn how it forms, why it exists, and why it causes us more pain than pleasure. And as we journey through this, you will uncover the very secret that has been hidden from you all along. The ego is not something to be defeated, but something to be transcended. We will explore the wisdom of ancient traditions, uncover the philosophies of long-forgotten mystics, and examine modern psychological insights that all point to the same revelation. The ego is a trap that we've been conditioned to live in. But here's the real question. What happens when you step out of the trap? What does life look like when you release the chains of the ego and discover your true self? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will see the ego for what it truly is. And once you do, there's no turning back. To truly understand the ego trap, we must first step back, way back into the ancient mysteries that have been buried by time. The concept of the ego is not new. In fact, it has been discussed by mystics, philosophers, and spiritual teachers for centuries, each one offering a unique perspective on its nature and its dangers. One of the earliest records of ego-related wisdom comes from the teachings of ancient Egypt. The Egyptians were well versed in the spiritual realms, understanding the importance of aligning one's spirit with the divine order, or Mat. But they also understood the dangers of the false self, or what we might now call the ego. In their view, the ego was a form of illusion, a distortion of the true self. The Ba, or soul, could not reach its fullest potential as long as it was imprisoned by the false identity constructed by the ego. The ancient Egyptian texts reveal that only through shedding this false identity could one achieve the higher state of spiritual awareness, one that is free of all limitations. But it wasn't just in Egypt where this wisdom was passed down. In the East, the concept of the ego was explored in the profound spiritual teachings of Buddhism and Hinduism. In Buddhism, the ego is called anatta, which means no self or non-self. The Buddha taught that the belief in a permanent, unchanging self is the root cause of suffering. He said that all suffering arises from attachment to the ego, our false self. Until one experiences the emptiness of the self, they will continue to chase after transient pleasures, creating endless cycles of desire and disappointment. In the West, the Stoics too had profound insights into the nature of the ego. Marcus Aurelius, one of the last great Stoic philosophers, spoke of the ego in terms of the false narratives we create about ourselves. He believed that these illusions, which are often constructed from our need for approval and recognition, must be broken down in order to achieve inner peace and wisdom. The things you think about yourself are just illusions. What matters is how you respond to life. Perhaps the most influential modern thinker on this subject was Carl Jung, whose concept of the shadow self aligns closely with the ancient understanding of the ego. According to Jung, the ego is the mask we wear to interact with the world, while the shadow represents the hidden aspects of ourselves that we repress. The shadow self, though often ignored, contains truths that the ego tries to avoid. Until we face the shadow, we remain in a constant state of internal conflict, unable to achieve wholeness. Despite these ancient and modern teachings, the idea of the ego has been widely misunderstood. In the modern world, the ego is often seen as a necessary part of our identity, something that defines who we are, gives us direction, and drives us toward success. But what if this view is flawed? What if, instead of being a source of strength, the ego is actually the source of our deepest struggles? This is where the hidden truth about the ego comes into play. For millennia, spiritual traditions and philosophies have pointed to the same conclusion. The ego is an illusion, a construct that keeps us trapped in cycles of fear, pride, and suffering. Yet in the modern age, We have been conditioned to glorify and protect it at all costs. But why? Why has this truth been concealed from us for so long? Why are we so deeply invested in maintaining the ego? These are the questions we must explore next. To unravel the nature of the ego trap, we must first understand how the ego forms and why it traps us in a false reality. It begins, as all things do, with a simple truth. You are not born with an ego. The ego, as we know it, is an artificial construct, a set of beliefs, expectations, and identities that we acquire over time. From the moment we enter this world, we are exposed to the energies, behaviors, and ideas of those around us. In the earliest stages of life, our consciousness is like a blank slate, open, fluid, and receptive to the world. The environment we grow up in, the people who care for us, the culture we are born into, all of these shape the way we begin to see ourselves in the world. But here's the catch. As we experience the world, we begin to form attachments to ideas, labels, and experiences that feel like who we are. Imagine a child fresh into the world, surrounded by the love and expectations of their parents. You're a good boy. You're my strong girl. These statements, though intended with love, begin to create the first fragments of an identity. The child, in their innocence, doesn't yet know that these words are not the truth of who they are. They are merely reflections of others' perceptions. But as the child grows, these reflections multiply. They start to gather beliefs, opinions, and self-definitions based on others' expectations and societal norms. I am smart. I am a leader. I am poor. I am broken. Over time, these labels, positive or negative, become the core of the ego. The most insidious aspect of the ego is that it doesn't reveal itself as a problem. It disguises itself as the very essence of who we are. It convinces us that these labels, these ideas, are not just ideas but truths. I am successful because I have money. I am valuable because I have power. I am nothing because I failed. The ego binds us to the past and future, creating stories about our worth, our potential, and our shortcomings. In doing so, it keeps us anchored in a false sense of self. But this illusion doesn't stop at the personal level. The ego expands outward into our interactions with others. Consider the way we constantly compare ourselves to others. Are we more successful, more attractive, more intelligent? This comparison isn't just a passing thought. It is an essential function of the ego. The ego thrives on comparison because it defines itself in relation to others. It is always in the process of building walls that keep us feeling separate from others and from our true nature. The ego thrives on validation, needs praise, acknowledgement, and admiration to survive. Think of the times you've posted something on social media, anxiously waiting for likes and comments. The ego tells you that your worth is tied to how others perceive you. When you receive approval, the ego feels validated. But when the validation fades, so does the ego's sense of self-worth, leaving you craving more. At the same time, the ego also feeds on fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. It turns every decision, every action, into a matter of survival because for the ego, survival is not just about staying alive. It is about maintaining the illusion of control, status, and superiority. Fear becomes a constant companion of the ego, whispering doubts and anxieties at every turn. This is the paradox of the ego trap. The more we try to satisfy it, the more we chase validation, control, and security, the more we entrench ourselves in the very illusion we are trying to escape. The ego thrives on our attachment to these external markers of success. And no matter how much we gain, the ego will always demand more. It is never satisfied. It is a hunger that can never be quenched. But this isn't the whole story. There is a deeper, more subtle aspect to the ego, the way it hides the truth from us. You see, the ego convinces us that the world and our place in it is fixed. It tells us that we are the sum of our experiences, our successes, our failures. It tells us that this is who we are. But the ego is not the true self. It is a mask, a construct. And in the next part, we will explore how this mask traps us in a never-ending cycle of suffering, and why we must learn to recognize it for what it truly is. Now that we've explored how the ego forms and its fundamental need for validation, fear, and comparison, we must dive deeper into its more subtle, often hidden mechanisms. The ego is not merely an external mask, it is a master manipulator, expertly shaping our perception of reality to serve its survival. But this manipulation is not always obvious. In fact, it is often camouflaged as self-preservation, self-improvement, or even self-love. The ego has an uncanny ability to mask itself under the guise of virtue. Take the pursuit of success, for example. Society teaches us that ambition, drive, and achievement are virtues, qualities to be celebrated and admired. But what happens when these virtues become tools of the ego? The desire for success, when driven by the need for external validation or superiority, becomes a trap. We chase success not for fulfillment, but to fulfill an internal emptiness created by the ego itself. Similarly, consider the concept of self-love. We are told to love ourselves, to practice self-care, and to recognize our worth. But for many, this self-love is conditional. It's rooted in the ego's desire to feel validated and superior. When the ego says, "I am worthy," it's not speaking from a place of true love, but from a need to affirm itself. This is why we often feel unfulfilled despite practicing self-love. It is not rooted in the depth of who we are, but in the superficial aspects of the ego. Even the most virtuous acts of kindness, charity, or service can be driven by the ego. When we help others, do we do it out of genuine compassion? Or are we seeking the praise, admiration, and approval that follows? The ego doesn't care whether the act is good or bad. It simply uses any opportunity to reinforce its sense of self. It might convince you that your kindness makes you a good person, or that your generosity makes you worthy of admiration. But the ego's version of love and kindness is transactional. It operates on the principle of give and take, not pure selflessness. Now let's explore how the ego constructs its most powerful illusion, the sense of identity. The ego convinces us that we are separate from the world around us, that we are isolated individuals with distinct lives, desires, and paths. This illusion of separateness is one of the ego's greatest triumphs. It builds walls between us and others, between us and the world. This sense of separateness leads to fear, resentment, and a desperate need to control our environment. The truth, however, is that we are not separate. The interconnectedness of all things, the unity of existence, has been recognized by great spiritual and philosophical traditions for millennia. Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, and that true liberation comes from realizing the interconnected nature of all things. The Taoists speak of the Tao, the flow of life that connects everything. Even quantum physics has started to hint at this interconnectedness. At the deepest level, the ego's sense of separation is a complete illusion. The ego, however, works tirelessly to maintain this illusion of separateness. It convinces you that you are alone, that your suffering is unique, and that the world is a hostile place where you must fight for survival. This is why we experience existential dread, loneliness, and anxiety. These feelings are the ego's creation, rooted in its belief that you are isolated from the whole. And because the ego sees the world as a competition for resources and status, it keeps you locked in a cycle of comparison, fear, and striving. But there is hope. There is a way to transcend this illusion of separation. The first step is to recognize the ego for what it is: a mask. A mask that hides your true nature. When you remove this mask, you see the interconnectedness of all things. You realize that you are not just your thoughts, your identity, or your possessions. You are part of something far greater, something eternal. This realization, however, does not come easily. It requires inner work. It requires peeling back the layers of the ego and confronting the illusions it has built around you. This is where the true spiritual path begins, the path of self-awareness, self-reflection, and mindfulness. As we move forward, we will explore how to break free from the ego's grip and begin to reclaim our true self. But before we do that, we must understand the most dangerous aspect of the ego trap: its ability to keep us trapped in suffering. Understanding the ego and its mechanisms is only the first step. To truly break free from its grip, you must take practical action. The journey of transcending the ego is not an abstract philosophical exercise. It is a lived experience, something you must actively engage with every day. It requires consistent effort, awareness, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths about yourself. 1. Recognize the illusion. Start with self-awareness. The first and most important step in breaking free from the ego is simply recognizing that it exists. This might sound deceptively simple, but in practice it's profoundly difficult. The ego is so deeply embedded in our thoughts and behaviors that we rarely notice it operating. To begin, you must cultivate a heightened sense of self-awareness. Observe your thoughts without judgment. When you feel an intense reaction, whether it's pride, anger, fear, or insecurity, ask yourself, why am I feeling this? What part of my identity is being threatened or validated right now? This simple inquiry is incredibly powerful because it disrupts the automatic, unconscious response of the ego. It brings the ego into your conscious awareness, giving you the opportunity to detach from its influence. In this process, remember that the ego feeds on your attachment to your thoughts. The moment you detach from these thoughts, you start to break its grip. This is the beginning of self-awareness, the ability to observe your thoughts, emotions, and reactions without identifying with them. This separation creates a space where you can begin to choose your responses, rather than being driven by unconscious egoic impulses. To practice detachment, let go of labels and external validation. As long as you cling to labels, identities, and external validation, the ego will continue to thrive. Every label you adopt, whether it's your job title, social status, or even the spiritual identity you hold, feeds the ego's desire for validation. Start by consciously letting go of the need to identify with these labels. Instead of saying, I am a successful entrepreneur, or I am a spiritual person, ask yourself, who am I without these labels? Begin to identify less with external things and more with your essence, the quiet, formless awareness behind your thoughts. This practice of detachment doesn't mean rejecting your responsibilities or roles in life. It means realizing that these roles do not define you. They are simply experiences you are having, not the core of who you are. A powerful exercise is to spend a day or two in silence, without speaking or engaging with others. In this silence, you will begin to confront the ego's noise, without the distractions of the outside world. You'll notice how much your thoughts are shaped by what others think of you. This practice can be transformative in seeing how deeply the ego is entwined with your self-image. To embrace the present moment, live beyond the past and future. The ego thrives in the past and the future. It anchors itself in memories of past successes or failures, and it projects itself into future hopes and anxieties. But the truth is that the ego is never present. It is always caught in a web of past regrets and future anxieties. To break free from this cycle, you must practice living in the present moment. This can be done through mindfulness, meditation, and conscious breathing. In the present moment, there is no room for the ego. It cannot exist in the stillness of the now, because it thrives only on the projection of self into time. Start small by incorporating moments of mindfulness into your day. Whether you're eating, walking, or even working, bring your full awareness to the present. Focus on the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, and the environment you are in. The more you practice being fully present, the more the ego's grip will loosen. 4. Observe without attachment. Develop the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the ability to observe your thoughts, emotions, and experiences without attaching to them. It is the art of simply being aware without the need to react. When you practice mindfulness, you begin to see the transient nature of all thoughts and feelings. You may be familiar with the saying, "This too shall pass." In the realm of mindfulness, you begin to understand that all thoughts, emotions, and experiences come and go. The ego, however, clings to them as if they define you. It creates an illusion of permanence, making you believe that your thoughts and emotions are who you are. But they are not. They are temporary. By practicing mindfulness, you can start to see these thoughts and emotions for what they truly are: temporary, fleeting phenomena that come and go. This creates space for true freedom. You can let go of attachments to your past mistakes, your future anxieties, and even your egoic desires. To let go of control, trust the flow of life. One of the ego's most insidious tactics is the need to control. It tells you that you must control every aspect of your life, your environment, your relationships, your success. But control is a trap. The more you try to control life, the more you entrench yourself in the ego's false sense of security. The antidote to control is trust. Trust that life will unfold as it is meant to. Trust that you do not need to control every outcome, because in truth, you cannot control most things. This doesn't mean you stop taking action or making decisions, but rather that you do so with a sense of openness and acceptance. Trust the flow of life and allow the universe to guide you. When you stop trying to manipulate every situation, you create space for miracles to occur. This is not surrendering to passivity. It is surrendering to the wisdom of the moment, to the unfolding of your true self. So what happens when you truly let go of the ego? When you stop identifying with the thoughts, roles, and labels that you've spent a lifetime cultivating, you experience freedom, freedom from fear, freedom from insecurity, and freedom from the endless cycle of striving. The ego, that ever-hungry illusion, loses its grip over your life. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone or anything. You begin to live from a place of authenticity, of pure awareness. But here's the paradox. In the absence of the ego, you don't become nothing, you become everything. When you let go of the false sense of self, you align with something greater, something universal. It's the recognition that the true you is not bound by time, labels, or societal expectations. You are the eternal, formless consciousness that observes, experiences, and creates. This is why great spiritual masters, Buddha, Jesus, Socrates, and countless others spoke of the importance of ego transcendence. They knew that the key to true liberation lies not in accumulating more, but in shedding everything that is not truly you. The ego can only create division, suffering, and separation. But when you transcend it, you align with the truth that we are all interconnected, part of a vast unbroken whole. As you begin to observe your thoughts and emotions from a place of detachment, as you practice mindfulness and trust the flow of life, you will find that the world becomes more vibrant, more meaningful. You will experience moments of clarity, peace, and joy that transcend any external success or failure. So the question remains, are you ready to let go? Are you ready to dissolve the illusion and discover who you truly are? The ego is a trap, but when you step out of it, you step into freedom, freedom to experience life as it was meant to be experienced. In the end, the only thing holding you back is yourself. And once you break free from the ego, you will see the truth for what it truly is. Now, imagine how your life would transform if you began to break free from the ego today. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us on this journey of uncovering more ancient truths and timeless wisdom. The ego is just the beginning. This journey is only starting, and we have much more to explore together.